It's been a long road, my friend.
Million hours work, every day.
It's been 25 years. And, when we started the band, originally the band was called Crown of Thorns. And we were Crown of Thorns from 1993 to 1997. And in 1997, Marge discovered that there was a Christian rock group in New Jersey who had actually trademarked the name Crown of Thorns back in 1991, which was 2 years before we ever used it. So we knew we were going to have to change our band name. And we had already put out 2 records, and I can't tell you how many different T-shirt designs and all this money, went out. And we had to redo everything. But the record that we had out at that time by our band Crown of Thorns was called The Spiritual Visions of Saint Madness. So we got an attorney and we did a worldwide search to see if anybody out there owned the name Saint Madness. Nobody did, so instantly on the spot we trademarked it.
Nice.
And in 1997, August of 97, we became Saint Madness.
Very, very cool.
It worked. It's hard to change your name, but
because there's nothing worse than having a ton of product out there and realizing some band came out of the woodwork and said, by the way, you've got our name and we're going to court.
You can't sell it.
And, it's better to do the search beforehand, make sure nobody has it. And that's why some bands will come up with, like, the craziest name for their band you could ever come up with, because they're trying to come up with a name that nobody has.
Yeah.
Because it costs you a lot of money if you find out someone else already had it before you.
Yeah, for sure.
That's kind of a big part of my job, too, as management, is to try and avoid those nasty little pitfalls that can end up costing a band, a lot. And if a band's putting out actual merchandise that they have out for sale, absolutely make sure you've got a clear title to that name, because boy, every band that puts merch out there struggles. They've got their jars and envelopes, and they're saving, gig money and going without equipment and everything else to make T-shirts or whatever they're making, So for heaven's sakes, make sure that you legitimately can do that.
It happened to Stone Temple Pilots. Their original name was Mighty Joe Young.
Oh, yeah.
And I think they were already signed, and they found out, and a band came out of the woodworks and said, you can't use our name. And they came up with Stone Temple Pilots because they had to change the band name.
Right. Wow.
I don't know how Kurt Cobain got away with Nirvana, because there had to have been other Nirvanas out there.
Yeah, you would have thought so.
Yeah, if they abandon the use of that name, then there's no problem.
Yeah.
And most people do. They give up and they never go back to it, But when you're in a band, you're taking a big chance because you're making a lot of product now. A lot of bands don't bother making hard copy CDs anymore, so they don't have to worry about that. But if you're making CDs and posters and banners with your name on it and T-shirts, et cetera, and all of a sudden it becomes useless because someone else owns a name, it's like 2 steps forward and 5 steps backwards,
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing it?
I've been doing this this is my 11th year.
Right on. Well, I'm glad we found you, or you found us. And gosh.
Yeah.
What made you decide to start a radio show for metal? Was it just, were you not hearing radio shows?
It was a combination. It was a combination between the woes of being in a band back in the '90s in Seattle, because we were like we were metal. I mean, we were playing Sabbath and Slayer and stuff like that, and plus our own stuff. And but it was it was all blown out jeans and flannel in Seattle.
Yeah.
And so we went to go to this one bar to get a job, and they asked us if we could cover Pearl Jam. And we're like, why would we cover Pearl Jam when they're playing 2 blocks away?
Yeah, right.
And so it was kind of tough, but and then so I kind of you'd give a DJ your tape and $20, and he'd walk off, and you'd see him stick the money in his pocket and throw the tape in the garbage or out in the street or what have you, and you're just like, those fuckers. So that was that was a driving one thing, because it was like, if we had no way of getting heard.
Yeah.
And it's like we were saying earlier, it's not as impossible to not be heard now, because you've got an avenue everywhere basically. But
Yeah.
but even just getting it, how do I say this? Even getting it listened to doesn't get you support. Doesn't get you,
Yeah.
and so I did that because of that. And then, oh, there was a time where I didn't really have a job, so I was unemployed for a while, and I went into I think it was Taco Time, and there was a guy behind the counter saying, "Hey, you would be good on the radio. Here, let me get a hold of my friend." So they send me down to Seattle to talk to this DJ, and
Yeah.
he's kind of a big time guy, not anymore, but he used to be. And he gets us on there, and well, he's talking to me a little bit, and he says, because there was a bunch of other crap going on that day, and he said, if you can come back down here on Monday, he says, I might have work for you. So I'm like, oh, all right. So I scrape up some more money, and I cruise back down to Seattle again, and he just freaking tries to tear me apart on the radio. Like
Huh.
first he's telling me to well, can you, he's, how like they'll do like the stupid AM DJ voice, and stacks of wax and shit like that. He's going, can you do
Yeah.
that? And I go, no, I never thought I would want to. And then he goes, well, can you say oh, and I can't remember the bands he said. We'll say it was like I don't know, they were kind of lameish, right? I mean, he goes, can you say that was, like that was Steely Dan, and up next is Stevie Nicks, and I go, well, could I do it with like better music? And so they had like these two guys on the side, like they're his little like crony DJ things, that he talks to during
Yeah,
the
like
during
a
the
Howard
morning.
Stern type of setup.
Yeah, and they're laughing their asses off, and the main DJ dude, he just stared at me like, "You son of a bitch,
Hmm.
you don't do that to me." And so then he says basically that I didn't have what it took because it was a cutthroat business, and so on. So it's like, all right, whatever. So I left. And then
Yeah.
it was like a week later, screwing around on Facebook, and one of my friends that I went to school with in high school, he's like, tune in and listen to my show. And I'm like, what show is that? He tells me about it, and I go, how the hell do you do that? So that was like in September of geez, that must have been like '07. And
Huh.
he says, all you got to do is download this and digitally sign this FCC agreement that you're not going to, blatantly, break every law in the world as you go on the radio. And I'm like, all right. And then I downloaded some music, which was illegally downloaded. And then, yeah, I just started playing. I was playing, basically just heavy metal, Sabbath, Slayer. You know, I found some like independent bands, like out of like I was playing a band called God Forbid. They're like out of
Yeah.
kind of the Maine, Massachusetts area, and just kind of scooping up little things here and there. And then I got contact with a Seattle band. I think I got their demo by mistake or something, and I asked them if I could rip it and play it on my show. And that was the beginning of it right there. And I just started trying to figure a way to get, I guess, try to help musicians help themselves, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense. You know, I can't. I don't have any
Yeah.
like other. I don't have any other uses. Basically, it's not like I have a photography business. They can go out and take pictures, or there's no management or anything like that. But hell, it's all
Yeah.
about getting noticed and getting heard and getting networked. You can hook up with bands because I've got a lot of bands that are coming out of like Germany and Finland and Poland and out there, and so there's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, there is.
A lot of countries still support metal. It's luckily the only place that really got in trouble was here in the Americas. Because when you submit to these radio stations and magazines and newsletters and zines and all that
Yeah,
overseas, boy, they take it right up.
yeah,
There's still lots of stations. Lots. I mean, look at Dokken and all the big concerts.
yeah,
They still can pack them in.
yeah,
On the alternative thing, when that explosion happened in Seattle, it also affected Arizona because in the 80s, Arizona was huge heavy metal and punk and all that. And once the Seattle scene exploded, everything changed here overnight from heavy metal, where everybody was saying, long live rock and roll. And the next day, everybody was making fun of you if you were in a metal band, and then all of a sudden everything was alternative.
That's how it was when you
Well,
were trying to play.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about that is, in 1995, Marge and I were out at some store, and I looked at her and I said, you know what? At this next show, I'm going to wear face paint. I don't care if the band wears it, but I'm going to wear it. Because when we started out, we didn't have face paint or none of that. And I said, you know, I've got to do something different because I was so pissed off about how, you know, people were starting to put down metal and say metal's dead, it's gone forever, blah, blah, blah. And then I was watching a lot of people I knew in metal bands suddenly dress alternative and changing their musical styles. And so what we did is we went more theatrical, more heavy, more dark, more shock. And it changed our life as a band because we went from being a headlining band on a Tuesday night at midnight when you know there's nobody there to instantly headlining every place we wanted to play on the weekends.
That's cool.
And all we did is add theatrics to our show because we were playing the exact same songs that we were playing before. But once we added a little blood and face paint and fire and lights and, you know, what have you, all of a sudden we were packing them in.
Yeah, it was a show.
And so
yeah.
St. Madness actually did very well in the 90s when, you know, most metal bands couldn't get a foothold.
Nice.
And we actually did very well. It's kind of like Pantera, you know, those guys exploded at the very same time when everybody was saying metal's dead. And here comes this band from Texas.
Yeah.
And they're just huge, you know, and in the 90s, I credit Pantera and Ozfest for keeping metal going in America because it was really thinning out and really dying off.
Yeah.
But Ozfest, you know, they brought up a lot of brand new metal bands and they showed the fans out there many different styles of metal. I thank God for Ozfest because a lot of bands were broke on that tour, on those tours. And Pantera, again, you know, Pantera put the boot right in the face of all the critics and said, fuck you. And the fans got behind them and they went huge, you know, and Pantera will always be forever one of my favorite bands of all time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very sad that Vinny and Dimebag are gone now.
Yeah. But, you know, now they're jamming out. They're jamming out together right now, and you can hear it already.
Oh, yeah, you know. But sadly, there will never be a true Pantera reunion ever. You know, they had talked for years about trying to get Zakk Wylde to, you know, play with them and do a tour or a tribute to Dimebag. But, of course, I don't think that'll really happen now. I mean, they can certainly put together a tribute band, but it won't be the same without Vinny in it.
Yeah, for sure. It'd just be Phil singing.
I got to meet Rita Haney at a Black Label Society show here in Phoenix in March of 2005, which was only a few months after Dimebag was killed. And she actually took the time out with my son and I to tell us about the night that Dimebag died and how it went down.
Wow.
And it was surreal listening to her tell the story because it was only like 4 months after it had happened. And at that time, she completely blamed Phil Anselmo for it, for the interviews that he gave right before Dimebag was killed. And she said, I don't want to talk to that guy at all. Now, I understand that they have since made up and that they're okay with each other. But she went through the night's event. She wasn't at the venue when he was killed. She was at home. But she said she got a phone call from Vinny, and Vinny was scared to death, and he said, I just saw some man shoot Dime several times, and I think he's dead. And she said, Vinny, don't fuck with me. And he said, I'm not fucking with you, Rita. And she said in the background she could hear shots going off.
Wow.
And I guess some of the crew guys grabbed Vinny off the drum kit and pulled him. There was like a kitchen area close by, and they dragged him in there, and he was hiding under one of those stainless steel tables or whatever in the back while the shooting was still going on. And he called Rita right away. And she said that on the day of the funeral, Phil called her and said, Rita, do you still love me? And she said, no, I don't love you. Because of you, I'm going to be alone forever. And she says that he said, yeah, well, right things happen to right people. And she said at that moment, she screamed at him on the phone, and Zakk Wylde was there, and he grabbed the phone, and said basically, if you ever talk to her like that again, I'll crush you. And she said that Phil said to him, "Oh, you don't know who you're talking to." And he said, "Yeah, Phil, I know who I'm talking to." And at that time she wanted nothing to do with Philip Anselmo whatsoever.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've read that since they've made up. But she told us all this, and I was just like in awe listening to her, the fact that she would even take the time to share it with total strangers,
Wow.
But the whole thing was just so tragic, I mean, a guy like Dimebag to be taken away, I mean, oh my God, he was so loved and so admired, and, it just, what a tragedy to die like that,
Yeah,
but he died doing what he loved, I guess.
That is for sure.
Like those guys at that Battleland massacre and everything, you're not supposed to die doing what you love.
Right.
And after it happened, I talked with our security guys, because the truth is, you go in a big concert, they metal wand you. Nowadays you can't go in except with plastic.
Yeah, take your shoes off.
Yeah.
But in small clubs like where a lot of the underground plays, there's nothing.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's security at the front, sometimes there's not. And like that horrible fire that happened at the station, I usually go look and locate the back doors right away, and because these smaller clubs, they're just not equipped for a lot of what goes on in them, and it's really unfortunate that bands have to actually think those thoughts these days.
Yeah.
Too many crazy motherfuckers out there.
That's for sure.
Thank you.
And it's sad because, again, this is the entertainment business. We're all out to entertain people, not to cause murder.
Right.
Not to cause people to hurt each other. I certainly, back in the day, there was a saying when we were still Crown of Thorns, it's not a Crown of Thorns show unless somebody gets hurt. And that's because back then our mosh pits were very brutal, but when I'm on stage, if I see someone getting hurt in a mosh pit or something, I feel bad, because I really don't want to see anybody get hurt at our shows, because we want to make people happy. We want to give them a mental vacation from their bills and their problems for a couple hours, and that's my goal, is just that they walk away feeling like they had a good time,
Money well spent.
Yeah, absolutely. And they come back for more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have no regrets. I've had a very good life in music up till this point, and we've worked very hard, of course. But I've got to do and experience things that I never thought I would, and I feel blessed. I feel I'm very fortunate.
So do you have is there one crazy, just insane moment that stands out in all your shows that you've done?
There's bunches. So I don't know. This I'll say this. Back in the '90s, we were playing a place called the Electric Ballroom, and in the middle of the song while I'm singing, this girl who I'd never seen before, there's a video of it on YouTube. She comes up on stage while I'm singing, and she gets down on her hands and knees, and she's like, waving to me like you're worshiping somebody,
Uh-huh.
And she was wearing a mini skirt with no panties. And of course, when she got on her hands and knees like that, it showed everybody what she had. And my bass player, he was trying to, keep playing, and he was looking and everything. It was pretty funny. And then she just got up and strutted off stage, and I never saw her again.
That's funny.
But yeah, and again, stuff like that is an honor,
Been offered with live.
Yeah, we've had people offer us their wives to have sex with them. One guy said that it would be an honor if I had sex with his wife, and he said, "Don't worry, I share, no problem." But I'm gonna, pass basically. But yeah, it's awesome. I don't look down on groupies or anything, because groupies kept a lot of bands going, man. And groupies are awesome. I'll never put them down. I miss the days when women used to love to flash their tits at metal shows. It was awesome. It gave to that party environment.
Yeah.
It added to it. And, sometimes now it's very different, It's just a different attitude about it. But I do. I miss one of the reasons I used to love the '80s music so much is because that music was about partying and being with your friends and having fun, and metal was about being big and powerful. And then the '90s came in, and all the music was about how mommy and daddy didn't treat me right, and I'm depressed. And I was like, how can anybody get excited about that shit,
Yeah.
And it proved out because if you look at how many of the alternative artists that either killed themselves or OD'd, or, I mean, it's very sad. A lot of that music was great, but yeah, if you write enough depressing shit, eventually you're going to get depressed.
Yeah.
So I like to write stuff to have fun and have a good time.